Hey guys, just wanted to speak on energy, manifestation, and vibrations. Now, as far as it goes, um, not many people know that our body is just a big human sponge. And with that, being a sponge, it absorbs every vibration and energy pattern because everything around us is made of energy. And speaking of that, that's where Nikolai Tesla, if you're familiar with Nikolai Tesla, he always spoke basically quoting, where a lot of people are familiar with. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, you would have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Now, when you think in those terms, you would know that everything is conscious, and in everything being conscious, everything also has energy from the divine source. So being as that is, having all this energy, we can all connect to these energies, whether it's from what we're eating, whether it's from activity, whether it's from intimacy, whether it's just from in being around another person or being around a certain environment, a certain area. You pick up certain vibrational frequencies that you can feel, or if you don't feel it, it will still be inside of your auric field, or if it's not in your auric field, it will be conducted biochemically and you can't see it. Now, when you think in terms of these energies, it brings up these certain thoughts when certain people want to think about in terms of transcendental manifestation. And bringing up transcendental manifestation, that's just talking about to where is like raising of your higher conscious frequencies and causing energy to manifest. See, but it would have to come from a humble abode and not from the ego, because it will be for thy will of God, not of our will. And the thing about that, it brings up this story from Ramdas that I had heard, a long while back, but it always, certain things stick with you. And the story was about a man, and this man basically went to Maharaji, just to get some blessings and stuff like that. And so when he went to Maharaji, he was showing him this stone that he had acquired for his puja table, and Maharaji wanted to test his attachment to materialism. And so he was like, "Can I have the stone?" And he was like, "Oh no, Maharaji, it's for my puja, it's really, really important. I need to have it for my puja." And he goes, "Okay," and so he tells him, "I'll give you 40 rupees. And he only got the stone for like 1 rupee. It wasn't a lot. It's only worth like about 1 rupee. And so he was like, "You know what, Maharaji, if you want it, I'll give it to you." And he parted ways with it. Now, that's where Maharaji tested him, and he had basically told him, "Can I have the 40 rupees? And he was, appalled, and he got mad, the gentleman, and he was like, "I knew you wouldn't give me the money. This was all just to bamboozle me, to get me." And so that's where he had basically told him, "Do you have money? Are you like a well-off man?" And he goes, "Well, I have money, but not much." And he's like, "Well, how much money do you have?" And he was saying he has $500. And so Maharaji, using his clairvoyantness and using that clairvoyantness, he knew that the gentleman in his lapel of his coat had $500. And he was telling him, to give me the money in your coat. And so he gave him the money, and Maharaji had thrown that and the 40 rupees inside of the fire. And the gentleman got so mad. And when he got mad, he was just kind of like, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. Like, are you crazy? And he was like, that's all I had left. And so that's when Maharaji gets these tongs for the fire. And when he gets these tongs, he reaches in there and he pulls out brand new crisp rupees, $500, and gives it to him. And this story was just surfing a scene around because it made me think of the manifestation. How oftentimes people want things to manifest in their lives, but are we even being humble enough, or are we even looking at our own state of being internally and wondering if those things need be manifest? Are they even for our wants, or are they for our needs? Because at the same time, anything we should need would be the need of God, right? Because our needs should be God's needs, you know, like I just said earlier, to be of God's will, of thy God's will. And so coming into that, God's will, God will it to be as if anything need to be manifest, he will make manifest. He can have you into a higher vibrational consciousness to where you can make manifest. See, but in these manifestations, there's some people that use manifestations for the sake of their ego, and there's some that use it out of their humility for others to serve God, and not out of the ego at all. It is not of self. Anything that Maharaji had done wasn't of his self or his somebodyness or out of his ego. You know, because that gentleman learned something that day about his attachments, and that's all Maharaji was trying to show him, was about his attachments and how crazy he got for money and how attached he was. And so in that, it lets us know about our attachments also. Our attachments and why we can't manifest, or our attachments into the ignorance of not wanting to come into a higher conscious state, of at least just being aware of certain things we do as far as like energy. People don't transmute their energy the way they're supposed to, and that causes a lot of confusion in some, a lot of strife. Sometimes people are so pent up with anger, or they're so pent up with sorrow, or they're so pent up, you know, and that's just emotional, you know, and that can all be transmuted. Some people don't know how to transmute that energy of their emotions or the invisible energies that they pick up, being that human sponge that we were speaking of earlier. Picking up all this energy, other people's emotions, picking up that energy, picking up all the vibrations that people give off and that they emit, picking it all up and not knowing how to transmute it. It causes in some people so much tension, so much pent upness. Some people commit suicide. Some people just pop in anger. Some people go insane to where they feel like they have no conceptual grasp of what they are doing, and they just pop into all these emotions, or they just pop into these experiences. And so that's also something to where it's like a loss of cling or loss of attachment to certain experiences, and also engaging in coming into loving awareness to where everything else that isn't loving awareness falls away, as far as your attachments, as far as your anger, your sorrows, and you can also learn to transmute those energies. Transmuting those energies will not leave you so pent up, and it will all flow. And everything being in flow, and everything being emitted in love. And so, with that being said, that's where manifestation can come out of. That loving awareness, that manifest of loving awareness can come out of you being in better connection of being. just being. Everything being energy, it is all connected to the one source energy of the divine, of the Most High. Now, that's where we can see that all being connected to that, that's where it is like what it is spoken, we are made in God's image. It is of that energy. And so, being in connection with that energy, you can really raise above, out of this frame of what we see as this materialization of everything. Because all this materialization is just gross manifestations of a low vibratory rate. And we believe to be awed by it, but the actual awe is within you. The actual all is in the unseen. So what do you choose to be awed by? What do you choose to marvel when you're a marvel? You know, a lot of people are so fixated nowadays on the superhero comics, and now that Marvel's coming out with all these movies, you know, Avengers and everything like that, and entertainment is good, you know, but in the same time, exiting the frame, it is crazy to see how people would rather watch a Marvel rather than be a Marvel, you know? And thinking about being a Marvel, that's where you come into that boundary dissolution of knowing that all is one and nothing is separate. And so in that sense of you being in connection with God and being in connection with that loving awareness, you can also dissolute the boundary of, you know, that marvelness of yourself, and knowing that all those transmutations can manifest as like X-Men. You know, I'm not using superpowers for any crazy stuff, but as far as it goes, that is made manifest for some monks, you know, that get to those levels of consciousness. There's been stories spoken of how there was a war between, you know, the British and India, and some of the monks in India, you know, in some of the Buddhist temples also, when they tried to raid those temples, that they couldn't come against some of the monks because of their transcendental clairvoyant powers of things that they could not explain. But they couldn't go against it, against their telepathy, against a lot of other things that they were doing, like levitation and disappearing out of thin air. So, out of it all, how would some transmute that energy? Some do it through music, some do it through art, some do it through their sadhana, whatever their sadhana may be. But as far as it goes, your sadhana is your life practice, you know? Now, in your life's practice, how would you transmute that energy? If you want to think about it, you can transmute it through meditation. You can transmute it through so many different activities that aren't really activities because, you know, in the illusion, nothing exists. You know, we have to know that we're not really chopping wood and carrying water, you know, and in it all, we are just in these low vibratory rates, caught in thought forms, concepts, and models. And so being caught in these concepts and models, we kind of live it out. Until you can exit the frame and see it from all perspectives of a multi-layered dimensions. And that's where you would be the being on the bridge watching overhead of the other being. So, as far as it goes, when you think about this transmutation of energy, whether it be breath work, meditation, you can push, especially through breath work, you can push all that negative energy out, or all the unwanted or unneeded energy within yourself out. And that's a way of emptying it. But bringing in all consciousness and bringing in all the love of the universe inside of you, even though it is already inside of you. Now, when you become more experienced at transmuting energy, you will really know that all is energy, and all is energy is not saying that there is good energy or bad energy. It's just energy, and you can transmute all. So even though there is something that would be perceived as bad energy, you can still transmute it. Ram Dass all day transmutes, he's at a lecture, a baby's crying, a siren's going off, and he gets high. You can hear it go up his spine, and he just moves that energy up his spine, and he goes, ah. And him doing that is like in its sense of a little hit of ecstasy. It was a high that he picked up, because all energy can be transformed. And so with that, once you would come more into an awareness to where you can transmute that energy better, then you could transmute that energy in a sense to where you would not be getting so overwhelmed by all the negative energy, or capturing it and not knowing how to make it flow. But you would use it and utilize it and turn it into an energy that is usable for you. So the whole reason I just wanted to touch on this about energy, about this getting back into communion with the divine source, with the Most High, getting into that communion, because once you're in that connection, and knowing that you are always in that connection and being in that connection, you can tap into an infinite abundance. Well, thank you for joining me in this little discussion, and you have a great day.